The virus RSV poses serious risk for people, especially those over 60 and also young children. The Food and Drug Administration recently approved the first ever RSV vaccine to shield older adults from some of the most severe symptoms. And joining us to talk more about that is Dr. Reena Mehta from the Uptown Allergy and Asthma. Good morning to you. What kind of a breakthrough is this?
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. This is a huge scientific breakthrough. Researchers have been trying to develop this RSV vaccine for 60 plus years. So we finally have something to offer our patients because, as many of you know, RSV is a very common virus. It can infect a lot of adults, a lot of children, but those at risk are those with underlying medical problems that we worry about hospitalization and death.
For most people, back up if we can just a minute, for most people this is just a mild little respiratory illness, right?
Exactly. So for the majority of people, it's a mild respiratory virus. However, in those elderly 60 and older with whom this vaccine is approved for, we worry about those with underlying cardiac disease, lung disease, those with problems with the immune system. These are going to be our patients who end up hospitalized and could have, bad outcomes from the virus.
Now, they're still waiting on CDC, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. They're still waiting on that part of it. The FDA has to approve it, and then the CDC.
Exactly. So this vaccine is called RSV, and it is FDA approved, but the CDC will be meeting in June to further make recommendations. But the hope is that this vaccine will be available ages 60 and above starting in September.
Which would, we were discussing this in the commercial break, which would be just about the right time, right? That this is
exactly.
kind of where RSV really kicks up.
Exactly. RSV season starts in the fall and peaks in the winter. And what they found is that with one dose of this vaccine, it is 94% effective against RSV and 83% effective against severe disease. So, that's pretty good statistics when it comes to vaccine efficacy. What we still don't know is how often you'll need to get this vaccine. Right now, it's just one vaccine, no booster doses. But what future research will tell us is whether it's something you need to get every year, every 5 years. Do you need boosters? We just don't have that information yet.
And they'll do that just by having some people who take it in the future and others who don't, and try to determine the long-term effects, or how do they go about that?
Great question. So this is an international clinical trial, a phase 3 study, and so they have 25,000 participants across the world. So what they'll do is those people in the initial study they'll check antibody levels, try to figure out, do they still have protection, do they not, do they need booster doses? So it'll be those original people in the clinical trial that will then determine next steps, next future doses, and any potential side effects.
How about for pregnant women or for young children? Are they at all close to having something?
Right. And so we've been looking at RSV vaccines in our little ones, too, because those are the patients who get it most commonly. And they're looking at a vaccine right now in pregnant women age from 24 weeks to 36 weeks of gestation. So your second and third trimester of pregnancy, with the hope that if we can get these pregnant women the vaccine, that they'll get enough transfer of antibodies from the placenta to the baby to protect the babies in the first 6 months of life. And what they found was that in the clinical trials for pregnant women, in those first 3 months of the baby's life, there is about an 80% efficacy from the vaccine.
And so, as a doctor, what advice would you give to someone who might be, you go along your 30s, 40s, 50s, you get exposed to this, perhaps never had any problems, all of a sudden you're 68 years old and things don't work like they used to?
Well, I'm definitely going to recommend my parents to get this vaccine because, like I mentioned, RSV can be pretty deadly. You have about 60 to 120,000 hospitalizations per year in ages 65 and older from this virus. So for my patients that are 60 and older, for my own parents, I'm going to recommend getting this vaccine because, while it might be a mild cold in some people, we don't want to take that risk. And now we finally have great technology that can prevent it.
All right. We'll see what the CDC does with it in the months ahead. Dr. Reena Mehta, thank you.